On your Monday episode of Locked On Raptors, it is our biggest episode of the year. It's the beginning of the 6th annual Locked On Raptors over-unders and props spectacular with Vivek Jacob and Sahal Abdi here to compete with me for props and over-under glory once again. We've got 2 parts worth of this episode. So the part 1 will go today, part 2 tomorrow as we dig into some over-unders and props for the upcoming Toronto Raptors season as Vivek Jacob looks for his 5th title in 6 years, and I look for my first win ever. I hate this. If I don't win this year, I might retire the concept for good. Either way, part 1 coming up on today's show. Thanks so much for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 1261 of Locked On Raptors for Monday, October the 17th. I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors for going on 9 seasons now for various platforms, and you can follow Post Touches, my brand new Substack, for free, or you can pay some money too if you like to do that. That's where you can find my work. You can also find me on Twitter at WoodleySean. You can follow, subscribe to, rate, and review the podcast for free on all your favorite podcast apps, and we are on YouTube. If you want to see the video version of the show each day, just go to YouTube, search up Locked On Raptors, hit the big red subscribe button, and you are forever one of my best friends. All right, on today's show, speaking of good pals, Vivek Jacob, Sahal Abdi are here for the 6th straight year. I don't know, this is crazy. We're so deep into this. We're so old. We're wizened. We've aged. I get to win this damn thing once in the last 6 years, but we're doing it again. It's the Locked On Raptors annual over-unders and props spectacular. 18 questions, once again, 9 today, 9 tomorrow, as we try to predict the Raptors season through the majesty of over-unders and compete with one another in the process. Big V, Sahal, are you guys ready? Are you what are the feelings coming into this year? Big V, I'll go to you first as the reigning champion, the 4-time champion of this exercise. I don't know if we're going to have to test your pee or something. You might be doing the roids and getting all the success out of it. Who's to say? But how are you feeling coming in, the defending champion of the over-unders and prop spectacular?
I feel great, other than, some jet lag.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
It's about 11 p.m. in India right now, and got back yesterday, so feeling that a little bit, but other than that, I feel great, man. I'm ready for title number 5.
Sahal, you have won this one time, which is one more than I have, which makes me angry. How are you feeling coming in to this year's over-unders and props?
I'm feeling like the Cleveland Cavaliers in the mid 2010s, and this guy, unfortunately, he overhears the Warriors. So yeah, it hurts. I didn't even really absorb it and take it all in that he's won this 4 times. But there's absolutely no way I'm allowing 5. That's too far. I can't allow that.
Yeah, I might have to cheat in order to tailor this. I think I tried to do that last year. Yeah. Oh, God. Let's just start to get this over with, shall we? This is going to end poorly, probably, for me at least. All right, let's get into it. Part 1, we have 9 questions on tap for today. Part 1 is usually sort of player-based. We'll do individual player over-unders. We'll do, either-ors between 2 guys. And then at the part 2 is typically a little bit more sort of big-picture stuff over the course of the season, end-of-season awards, totals, wins, and all that stuff. So let's dive into our player-themed props and over-unders, and we'll do it with a rite of passage, with the best player on the team having this question associated with them. Pascal Siakam, points plus rebounds plus assists per game. I have set the over-under for this at 36.5. Last season, the number came in at around 36.6, so we're right here in that range. I will put it to you, Vivek Jacob first, the defending champion, to make the first claim selection. There's not even a pick here. You're just saying whether you're picking over or under. 36.5 points plus rebounds plus assists per game for 2-time All-NBA player Pascal Siakam. What you got?
I'm gonna go with the over. I think
over.
Pascal
all right.
is in for another big season. I think that when he said I want to be a top 5 player in the league, I didn't take that in the literal sense. I took it more in just being in that category of player. Right. Sure. And if you really were to break it down in terms of franchise players, there's probably 8, 9, 10, maybe guys that you would put in that category. And it's like, hey, can Pascal level up to that? I think he's going to come close. I think what he did over the final couple months of last season, pretty much after the All-Star break and went on that tear, I think if you were to look at those numbers, that would put him above the 36.5. So I'm rolling with Pascal on the over in this one.
I am with you as well. I'm going to take the over here with Pascal. I think he is primed for a massive year where everything is going to be easier for him. I think the assist numbers are going to be there. I think the scoring is probably going to come on all in a little bit more as the three-point shooting hopefully kind of becomes a little bit more of a counted upon thing. The corner three-point shooting was so good for him last year. I feel like you get him a couple extra corner attempts a game just because Scottie Barnes is on the ball more or whomever else is on the ball more. I think that's going to get Pascal up over that 23-point a game mark for the first time and is going to push him over 36.6 combined or 36.5 combined points, rebounds, assists. So, Hall, we were both on the over. Are you making it unanimous or are you taking the under?
I'm going to make it unanimous. It's going to be a clean sweep. I'm going to go over as well. Everything both of you guys said. I think one thing that stuck out to me the most was, and I think, Vivek, you were there in Victoria, if I'm not mistaken, during the practices and all that stuff that went down there. Kem Birch said about Pascal, this guy's one of the hardest working guys I've ever met in my entire life. He said something along the lines of, I don't even think he eats breakfast. I think he just immediately just goes out there and just starts, practicing. Last year, after last year, I watched Pascal Siakam and I was like, you know what? I feel like Pascal's hit his ceiling, which is okay because his ceiling, if you take it from last year, he's an All-NBA player and he's an All-Star. But I don't know. I just can't count out a guy that just works so incredibly hard and sets the standard for a team that works so incredibly hard. So I'm going to take the easy over. It's an easy one for me.
I like it. I think that's probably pretty chalk. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's nice to be optimistic about Pascal Siakam. It's also nice to know that we're all tied on the same number of points after one question. Regardless, that makes me feel pretty good as the guy who always loses this damn thing. All right, we go now to the number 2 over-under. OG Anunoby, points per game. I've set the over-under at 17.5. Last season, he averaged 17.1 points per game. I will put this to you, Sahal, first. Over or under 17.5 a game for OG?
It's tough because it's
that grimace,
it's going to be
that
one of
sigh makes it so I know I said a good line.
it's tough because it's going to be in that very specific range of 17.5. So I'm going to go under though for OG. And I think that's just based off the fact that there are better weapons off of the bench this year. You're going to see the scoring more balanced off of the bench, which I think is going to cut into OG just a tiny bit. I think Pascal's going to have a better year in scoring. I think there's a chance Gary also might have a better year in scoring. You can't really expect all the Raptors to stay healthy. And if one of these guys or two of these guys goes down, there's going to be some inflated scoring there. So in that case, that's probably the only way I could see OG kind of just fluttering up to the high 17s or the low 18s. But I'm going to go under just because I feel like there's a lot more basketball to go around.
Fair enough. Vivek, where are you at?
I'm going with the under as well. I think that Sahal is on the money with the touches being more spread out. And you look at Scottie Barnes maybe taking on a bigger role. You look at Otto Porter getting more looks, Thad Young being more involved, all of that. Precious looking to make his own rise. I think the ball is going to be more spread, and OG might spend a bit of time, which maybe we're seeing a little bit in preseason as well, trying to figure out that pecking order, figure out where his opportunities are going to come from.
That makes sense. That said, I'm breaking the trend here. I'm taking the over. I think OG is going to maybe not have that much of an uptick when it comes to his overall usage. I think there might be a slight uptick as they try to, if there were any concerns about his role and getting him a little bit more involved, like maybe that is implemented a little bit here. I also just think he's going to be more efficient than he was last year. He was kind of middling when it came to his true shooting. And for the most part in his career, he's been like around or far better than 60% true shooting for his career. I expect a bounce back to that with just the ease of the looks I'm expecting he's going to get working off of Scottie and Pascal. And I think he's going to really kind of hit that sweet opportunist role where he's just going to have gifted buckets falling into his hand that he then yams in reverse fashion right underneath. Like, I think it's going to be a pretty efficient year for him, and so I could see a pretty big uptick in his scoring. Maybe not a huge uptick, but I do think there will be a noted uptick from the 17.1 last year. I'm taking the over, and that means this is where the diversion begins. We go to the next one here.
Just quickly,
Fred,
before we go to the next question, I think you've hit on an interesting point to watch with OG.
Yeah.
Part of why we saw higher efficiency in previous seasons was because he was used in a very specific way, right?
Yeah.
In terms of playing off of others. And last season we saw, those post-up opportunities, those one-on-one opportunities. And so it's going to be a tricky balance. And it's like, yeah, you might get more efficiency, but that probably means his usage is down a bit as well. And so I think in terms of the scoring, that's going to be an interesting thing to look out for. If he can continue to get the post-up opportunities, and maybe he's leveled up there over the offseason and that type of stuff, and improve one-on-one as well in terms of getting by guys. And you pair that with the spot-up opportunities that he had more of in previous seasons, then I think, you might be looking good for the over.
I'm pretty bullish on there being a nice balance with OG this season. I don't want to spoil my response to a question we're going to get to later, but we'll get to that later. Speaking of getting into it later, we'll get to the next question and a few more after that in just 1 second here. Before we do that, however, I do want to tell you about our dear friends over at Rocket Money. The other day, tried to cancel my Amazon Prime subscription because Thursday Night Football is just so bad. I can't stand to watch it anymore. So I wanted to cancel it, but it's really difficult. You got to go through all these different hoops, and you got to call people. You got to wait on the line for online chats. It's very difficult to cancel subscriptions, but not with Rocket Money, formerly known as our pals True Bill. Are you wasting money on subscriptions? You should not be doing that. Subscriptions are designed to keep on renewing until you have the foresight to get rid of them, and then that's just going to cost you money for stuff that you don't want or need. This app allows you to have all your subscriptions in one place and cancel the ones you don't want to with one click. Rocket Money can even find subscriptions you didn't even know you were paying for. You may even find out you've been double charged for something, and they are here to help you with that. To cancel a subscription, all you got to do is press cancel, and Rocket Money will take care of the rest. Cancel unnecessary subscriptions with Rocket Money today. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Seriously, could save you hundreds a year. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Go check them out. All right, we continue on here with your first listen of the day, digging into our 6th annual Locked On Over, Under, and Prop Spectacular. 2 questions in the bag, 7 left on this part, 9 to come tomorrow as well. Let's get to question number 3. Fred VanVleet, catch and shoot attempts per game. Last year, he had 4.7 a game. I've set this year's over-under at 5.5. I will put it to you, Vivek, first. Over or under 5.5.
You gotta go first, man. You haven't gone first yet.
All right, fine. I'll go first. I'm taking the over. I think Fred's going to play off ball a whole bunch, and he's going to be a monster. He's going to pour in triples like a madman, and it's going to be great. 5.5 feels like enough of a jump up from last year's. There will be times where Fred's on the ball. That's just how it works. He's a point guard. It's not going to be like he's off the ball like Klay Thompson all the time, but I do think we'll see a pretty good uptick there, and I think everyone kind of realizes and agrees Fred VanVleet with catch and shoot threes is a good thing for the Raptors offense and the health as a whole, so I'm taking the over here. Vivek, you can now go.
I'm with you, Sean. I'm taking the over as well. I think the conversations that we've seen over the course of training camp and preseason lend towards that. What we talked about in terms of ball handling, Siakam getting more opportunities, Barnes getting more opportunities, Anunoby potentially getting more opportunities. And heck, you look at the way Delano's playing as well. Maybe you get some of those opportunities where Fred's playing off ball there as well. So I think Fred is going to have a good chunk of catch and shoot opportunities and will not need to do the heavy lifting that we saw in the first half of last season.
Here's hoping. Sahal, you going with the over as well?
Yeah, I am going for the over, and I was hoping Vivek would mention Delano Banton because I genuinely feel like he's earned a role on the team this year. And I think anytime you can get a guy like Fred, who I genuinely think if you kind of put him in a role where he's that off-ball shooter and you're running these different sets for him, I think he's probably top 10 in the league. This guy is a guy that when he sets his shot, almost never misses. So why not put him in a role where he doesn't have to use use up all that fatigue. And by the end of the year, we're looking at him, we're seeing a very sluggish Fred. And it helps as well because, the Raptors, the one of the main storylines, at least Raptors Twitter I've seen has been talking about, has been this backup point guard conundrum that's been going on. And I don't know if anyone's perfectly going to slot into that role, which will help Fred out. But I do think Delano Banton particularly has earned at least an early shot from Nick Nurse to be played quite a bit more. So I'm gonna go with you guys. I'm gonna take the over as well. I think there's gonna be a lot more opportunities for Fred.
I do find it very cute that we're still talking about regular positions with this team as though they matter. Backup point guard. Yeah, they don't care. They don't care about your backup point guards or your traditional fives. It's mushrooms basketball, baby. Open your mind. We're gonna go on now to the fourth question we have on the list here. Scottie Barnes, assists per game. Last year, he averaged 3.5. I have set the over-under this year at 4.5 points. Scottie feels like it might be a thing. They're going to try to get the ball in his hands a little bit. I will go to you, Sahal, first on this one. You taking the over or under on 4.5 assists a game for our little cherub king boy?
I'm gonna take the over again. This is I guess people are just gonna say we are super optimistic, or at least I am. I have to see what you guys do for this one as well. But I'm gonna take the over for Scottie. And I think this is gonna be an easy over. I can see Scottie in his second year getting to the 5 or 6 assist mark. It really just depends on, I guess, the situations he's put in. Nick Nurse has talked about, like Vivek said, has talked about during the offseason a lot about how he wants to get these guys in more roles where they can, their playmaking skills can be accentuated a little bit more. So we'll see for Scottie, but I think I believe in his skill to go downhill, to create for other guys. I believe in that skill so much for Scottie that I think 4.5. We're going to be looking at that over under, Sean, 3-4 years from now, and we're going to be laughing at it.
Probably. I don't think that's crazy a few years from now for sure. Personally, I'm taking the under myself.
Okay.
I think from the preseason, I am so high on Scottie Barnes, ridiculously high on Scottie Barnes. I also think in his second season, there's a chance that he doesn't quite look as amazing as everybody wants him to. And also that the point guard stuff takes some time to come along. We've seen it in the preseason. He kind of looks a little bit like he's figuring out the angles and the passing lanes when he kind of gets into close quarters. And that's stuff that's going to take time. I also think Pascal is going to have the ball a lot. I think OG is going to be given agency quite a bit more than he has been in the past. And I think Scottie is going to be asked to play as like a nominal center quite a bit too, especially in that small starting 5. We saw it in that Bulls game where they basically spammed Scottie pick and roll, and it was awesome. I had a great time watching it, but that's not going to lend itself to a ton of assists. I think the line is very close. Like I could see him getting like 4.2, 4.3, but I think it's going to be still a smidge under 4.5 because I think Pascal's going over that number. I think Fred's going over that number still, and there's only so many assists to go around on a team that doesn't really do assists all that well. So I'm going to say under. You took the over, right, Sahal? Vivek, where are you?
I'm going with the under as well. Like you, Sean, I'm very high on Scottie.
Not to say yours isn't great also, Sahal. It's just less great right now than ours.
Yeah, I think Scottie, it's going to be close. I think making the leap from 3.5 to over 4.5 is a big one. And so I think he might end up just slightly short or thereabouts. I think it'll be strong growth if he just gets anywhere over 4. And so, to your point, the Raptors offense as a whole doesn't lend to a lot of assists to go around. And so if you've got Pascal getting his and Fred getting his, how much is left over for Scottie will be interesting to see. And then, one thing that I think might have been a bit sneaky with Scottie last season as well is a lot of his great passes were for interior finishes, and a lot of times players are getting fouled on those. And so we're not at the point yet where you're getting assists on those free throws.
We should be. That should be a thing. What are we doing? Come on, NBA. Pad them stats.
and again, to your point, Sean, it's like Scottie is a really great playmaker in transition. And there's still some growth that needs to be had in the half court. So I think from that standpoint, he'll still be growing in that area in this second season. And so I think he might fall just a little bit short.
Raptors fans got to prepare themselves for the fact that Scottie Barnes might not be LeBron James right away, and that's all right. This is going to take some time, but guess what? They got plenty of time. Let's go to the next one here. Gary Trent Jr., 30-plus point games. We know the man can get himself some buckets. Last year, he scored 10 times 30 points or more. I have set the over-under at a tidy 9.5. We will go with Vivek first on this one. What do you got? Over under 9.5 30-point games for old GTJ.
I would like some clarification on this question. I would like to know.
I see where you're going with this one.
If it's 30-plus point games as a Raptor specifically.
No, let's just say over the course of the full season of Gary Trent Jr., the first 50 or so games with the Raptors and the final 30 or so games with, I don't know, the Chicago Bulls or something after the Zach LaVine trade that's forthcoming. Who's to say? But
I hate you guys.
Yeah, we'll go full season because we can't predict he's going to get traded, even though I think it might happen. Shout out to Eric Kareen for just call him like it is in his piece today, his 15 predictions. But yeah, we'll go full season. What you got?
I am going to go with the under.
Okay.
I think that there's, there's going to be a lot of mouths to be fed on this Raptors team. And I do think when Otto Porter Jr. is healthy, he's going to get a ton of 3-point looks. And I think that the overall offense will look a bit more balanced. And so, Gary will see a good chunk of games in the 20s. But the 30 plus, it's going to take some injuries. I'm pretty sure, when he went on that streak last season, that 30-point streak, there were a few guys missing. So unless something like that happens, I will take the under for this season.
It is worth noting that, 50% of his 30-point games came over the course of a week last year. So it's tricky. Where are you going with this, Sahal?
This one's pretty easy for me. I'm going to go under as well.
Okay.
I just don't think Gary can get there. I can see maybe 4, maybe 5 30-plus point games. I think the Raptors have been pretty unlucky, and I'm bringing it back to injuries. I just don't think they suffer as many injuries as they have the last few years. I think the Raptors have been one of the most unlucky teams when it comes to injuries. We've seen it during the COVID year. They had their whole team out. Last year as well, they suffered from injuries. Guys started slowing down with the high minute counts. I don't see Gary getting opportunities to get that many shots up. And I know all the Gary Trent Jr. fans out there are laughing at me because it doesn't matter. No one can really stop Gary Trent Jr. when he has the ball in his hands. Like, he's probably going to put that shot up. But I think he's in the 4 or 5, possibly 6 range in terms of 30-plus point games. And Vivek, that's a funny joke because I'm a Gary Trent Jr. fan and I don't appreciate that. No, I'm joking.
It's not a joke, man. He might get traded. He might get traded. It's just the way, like, he's on an expiring contract, and the Raptors have a way of, they did this exact thing with Norman Powell, where they kicked the can down the road with a younger player, and I could totally see that happening with Gary Trent Jr. So, look, I'm torn here because I agree it's probably the under, but in the interest of strategy, I'm going to take the over on this one, and here's my case for it. I agree Gary is probably going to have a less of a prominent role this season. I think at some point he probably gets moved to the bench as they realize Precious Achiuwa starting is the way to go forward, and everyone loves that. And so there's going to be less opportunity. That said, if Gary Trent Jr. is coming off the bench, there will be plenty of opportunities for him to go full gunner mode and have random nights where he walks into 30 points just because he's on a heater. You also couple the fact that if he does get traded, he's probably getting traded to a team where he's going to get to go batshit crazy in the back part of the season, and I could see him putting up crazy numbers for a terrible team to close the year if there is a trade to be had. And so I will go with the over, even if I don't totally believe it. It will score me a point against you guys if he does in fact score, if he does do it, and that gets you points and wins in this damn whatever we're doing here, the whole constructs of the game we've created. Let's go last one here before another quick break. Total minutes played. This is an either-or question. Who will play more minutes, Thad Young or Otto Porter Jr.? Sahal, I will let you go first here.
I'm gonna go Otto Porter Jr.
Okay.
And I think there's going to be a little bit of a sizable difference just because Otto can afford you incredible spot up 3-point shooting.
Hmm.
He's a bigger guy as a swing man. He's a much bigger guy. You could throw him on a 5 or every couple plays when he's in. You could put him on a 4. You could put him on a 3. He's just going to give Nick Nurse a lot of kind of leeway to really just throw Otto Porter around and tell him, hey, your role's very, very, very specific on offense. Just stretch the floor with us, hit us with a couple cuts here and there, but essentially just let the more prominent players kind of do their thing. And I think Otto's fine with that. I think
Hmm.
this is why I was so happy with this signing for the Toronto Raptors. I think it's just a perfect signing for what Nick Nurse wants to do. He fits in to their system, kind of like to their ethos of what the Raptors do. So I'm going to go Otto Porter, and I think Thad's going to get some opportunity, especially early in the season, because he played well for Nick Nurse at the end of last year, right after that trade. But I do think Otto just will offer more to Nick Nurse, and he'll realize that very soon.
Big V, what about you?
I'm gonna go with Thad.
All
I
right.
think I love what Otto Porter Jr. brings to the table. I think he's a much needed addition, but I just have doubts about his health, and
Yeah.
I don't think we're gonna see him in. I think he's gonna sit, one side of a back-to-back, pretty much for the entire season. I think the fact that he's already missed pretty much the entire preseason isn't encouraging, and so I think that Thad will end up with more minutes, but it might be interesting to view from like a minutes per game perspective.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think there's a good case for both. I'm also going to go Otto Porter Jr. here, just because I think there's more of a chance that Thad becomes a DNP-CD guy than Otto Porter if both are healthy. I'm baking in that Porter's going to miss 25 games or something like that, probably. But I also think there's a world in which, this team is testing the limits of how many dudes the exact same size can you have on the floor where none of them can really shoot. And I kind of think if there is going to be an odd man out, I don't think it's going to be Precious. Don't think it's going to be Boucher. I don't think it's going to be Porter because of 3-point shooting. And if like Banton finds himself in the rotation or they just kind of trim things down to 8, I feel like Thad's the odd man out in that situation. And so as the rotation evolves, I could see there being stretches of the year where Thad finds himself DNP-CD'd pretty regularly, and that will hurt the minutes total. I don't know how likely it is, but I'm just kind of going off of potential outcomes here. And it's a matter of the sort of. I think Otto Porter, when he plays, is going to play a lot because I think he's going to be in part of their best lineups in a lot of the time, right? Like, I think he's going to swap in and play with starter heavy lineups, and those are going to crush. I think he's going to play with bench lineups. Those are going to be good just because his shooting's so valuable. So, because of that, I'm going Otto here, but I think it's a compelling case either way. We're going to continue on in just 1 second. We're going to round it out with the final 3 over-unders or either ors or whatever prop bets that we have for the first part of our annual over-under spectacular. We'll get to that in just 1 sec. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at betonline.net who have supplied some of the lines here for this here podcast. And they are, of course, giving you all the information you need for your football betting info. You've got everything from injury reports, news, podcasts, in-depth articles, and analysis telling you all of the things you need to know about the NFL, like don't bet money on the New York Jets and other common things like that. And obviously some more difficult things like who should you throw your money on between games, between good teams and things like that. It's the fastest, easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and sports. You got the MLB playoffs going on, NHL, NBA season starting up, MMA, boxing, and golf. It's all there for you. Become the informed wagerer. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts. And we continue on here, rounding out part 1 of our over-under spectacular, the 6th edition of it here on Locked On Raptors, as we are all very old. Let's go to the 7th question on the first half of our list of questions. This one is another minutes either or. Who plays more total minutes between Gary Trent Jr. and Precious Achiuwa? I'll go first on this one. I'm going to go Precious just by a smidge. I think both are gonna probably play around 30 minutes a game, but I just think Precious at some point is going to barge his way into the starting five. It will be undeniable that he's got to be in there, and he's going to close games. His defense is just going to be too bloody valuable. I'm taking Precious, even though I think there's a world in which, things don't go as swimmingly as we expect they're going to go with Precious, and maybe he kind of finds himself in the doghouse sometimes, but I'm going to go Precious here. Vivek, who you got here?
I'm going to go Gary.
All right.
I think, I was hoping that Precious would be the starter at this point already. The fact that hasn't happened shows that I think Nick genuinely believes that starting five is the best five that he has. And let's face it, we talk a lot about how, we kind of want to bring down general expectations on Scottie and not sort of set him up for, these huge expectations and potentially failing them. I think we have to be mindful of that a little bit with Precious as well. And,
sure.
He went on this amazing tear to finish the season last season. And I think he's going to be really good this season. But I think his offense still has a ways to go. I mean, especially as a finisher around the basket, if he can level up, as a roller to the basket, then I think that's going to be huge for the Raptors. The 3-point shooting, we'll see how that comes along. But I think Gary, what you're going to get. And so I think that's what Nick likes about him. And so he's going to get that opportunity to start. And we have no idea when that might change. So I'll roll with Gary, especially if he does get traded eventually and then is gunning and getting all the minutes he can on a terrible team.
There you go. Not bad. Sahal, how you going with this one?
I'm going to pull a Vivek. I'm going to say, can I have some clarification on if this means, are we going to count Gary Trent Jr.'s minutes on another team, minutes per game?
We will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll bake in, because it can go either way, right? I'm not saying it's guaranteed he's getting traded or anything like that. It's totally
we're not
possibly
saying that.
plays the right year out. So,
I just wanted to use the Vivek card really quickly.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go Gary as well, and this is not, I think, a shot at Precious at all. I think Vivek put it perfectly when he said, they know exactly who Gary Trent Jr. is, and Precious is still in that development stage where he's not even close to his ceiling yet. So he still has some kinks to work out in his game. And I think those kinks are going to come in the form of mistakes here and there for Precious. And that's okay because, naturally younger players are going to be prone to be making more mistakes than some of the older vets, right? And that's not to say Gary Trent Jr. is some really old guy, because sometimes I forget that this guy, I think he's 23 or something like that.
He's very, very young, yeah.
Yeah, you watch him and you think, okay, this guy's probably 27, 28. He's not. So, but he's been in the league for quite a while. He's been in the playoffs. He's guarded guys like LeBron in the bubble. So he's been there, kind of done that so far for a 23, 24-year-old for Gary Trent Jr. Which is why I think when it really comes down to it, Nick Nurse is going to go, we need Gary in crucial points of the game. And I think there's going to be a small difference. I don't think it's going to be massive. I could see Gary maybe at 30, 31 minutes per game. Precious maybe at 28, 29. It's not going to be a massive difference.
Yeah, I think it's going to be close. Lots of disagreement. This is great. This is probably going to
really
benefit Vivek somehow, but there's lots of disagreement. It's good. We got two more left here. The last two, by the way, have multiple potential answers. It's not just an either or an over or an under. So the second to last one is, who leads the Toronto Raptors in total steals this season? Last year, Gary Trent Jr. led the way with 122 in 70 games. Fred VanVleet had 111. Pascal at 85. Scottie at 80. OG had 71 in 48 games. I'll go with Vivek first here. Who you got?
This is such an interesting one because the X factor is how many of Fred's steals are the NBA gonna put down as blocks?
Yeah, if we account for blocks, Fred had 35 of those last year, of which 33 were actually steals, probably. So
yeah, exactly. But having said that, I'm gonna go with Fred. I am going to be a fool and trust Nick when he says that he will play Fred less, and I think that will portend to him playing out the whole season with consistency, high level consistency, and so I'll put him as the steals leader.
Right on. Sahal, what about you?
I'm gonna go. I think there's really only two guys that in terms of Gary Trent Jr. that really have an opportunity to go for this. I think there's gonna be guys who kind of that increase, like Scottie Barnes, possibly Pascal Siakam, possibly guys like Precious. But I'm gonna go Gary. I'm gonna go Gary Trent Jr. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he led the team, I think, with 122 steals last season. Fred was right underneath. I'm looking at it now, 111 steals. So I'm gonna say that Gary's role stays pretty similar to last season. And Vivek, I'm sorry, man. I don't trust Nick Nurse that Fred's minutes or his time on the court's gonna decrease. I don't. Exactly. I just don't think it's gonna happen. So I do think Fred gets very close. But I'm gonna go with Gary.
We got 3 different answers for this one. I'm taking OG Anunoby. 71 last year in 48 games. I think he's going to have a monster defensive season. I think he's going to be jumping passing lanes like a maniac, poking the ball out of people's hands like a maniac. If you go per game last year, it was 1.7 for both Fred and Gary and 1.5 for OG. So he's not far off on a per game pace already. And I think I'm very high on OG Anunoby this season is what I'm learning as we get into the year. And I think the defense is going to be worthy of the all defense team he should have made 2 years ago. So I'm going to go OG here by the narrowest of margins, but I think he's going to do it. And that brings us to the final question of the first part of our over-unders and prop spectacular. Who will be the second leading scorer on the Toronto Raptors this season? We will begin with Sahal Abdi, of course. Last year, was it Fred? I think it was Fred, if I'm not mistaken, on a per-game basis. That's what we're going for. It's not just total points. We'll go per game. And it's correct. Fred, 20.3 points per game last year, was number 2 on the team. I will turn this over to you, Sahal. Who's going to be the number 2 scorer on the Raptors this year?
I'm going to stick with Fred. I think it's going to be Fred again. And I do think a lot of that is going to have to do with him staying around that same 20 point per game. But he's going to do it differently. Like we said, he's going to be off ball a lot more. And him playing that off ball role, I think, is going to increase his efficiency a lot more. Like I said, Fred as a spot up shooter is incredible. I think when you ask him to do too much off the dribble, too much in terms of play initiation, I don't think, you might see some of Fred, his dark side come in where he kind of over dribbles a little bit. But I think Fred, if you get him into that role, almost like if you guys remember that 2019 championship year where he would come off the bench and he would have a very specific role. But I think it's just going to be a larger, more starter friendly role where he's going to be doing a lot of the more same things. And you don't need Fred to bring up the ball 60%, 70% of possessions when you have guys like Scottie, Pascal. There's so many other guys. So I do think the efficiency is going to help his numbers kind of stay the same. A lot of people think off ball immediately means your numbers are going to drop. I don't think so. But we'll see. Honestly, we'll see, because at this point, Nick Nurse is saying one thing, and then we might just see the exact same role from Fred this upcoming season. But I just don't think Gary can do enough to really just surpass Fred on that note. And I'm high on OG like every single offseason, but I don't know. Like from what I've seen so far in the preseason, it seems like there's a little bit of a hierarchy in terms of who's going to get the ball and when, especially when the game starts. So I'm going to go Fred pretty confidently. And I'm sorry to all the Scottie Barnes, LeBron James comparison loving people.
I like it. It's not my pick. I'm going, guess who, baby? OG Anunoby. He's doing it. This is the year. It's happening. The breakout. Look, it's not going to be like he's averaging 25 a game and is like a clear all-star type breakout. I just think he's going to be really freaking good and efficient. I think he's going to come in around like 19 and a half a game, maybe flirt with 20. And I think that's going to be good enough for second on a team that will be very balanced. I think we'll see a slight uptick from Scottie up to around 17 or so. I think we'll see Fred drop back to around 16 or so as he takes on more of a sort of a backseat role, I think we could see a very similar thing to what we saw with Kyle Lowry at times, right? Where the team needed him to play a certain way, and that led to him dropping off in numbers at certain times. I think we'll see that from Fred. And I think Gary's also going to have a slight drop off as well from where he was last year, just as his role evolves. Precious will get his name into the conversation a little more often. I'm going OG as the number 2 scorer on this Raptors team. Vivek, where are you going?
I'm rolling with Fred. I think
All right.
he is the second best scorer on the team. I think they're going to need him to do a ton of scoring, especially the value he brings as a 3-point shooter. Those catch and shoots, as we discussed, are going to be up. So I think his scoring is going to be right around the same level. So OG, Gary, Scottie, I think they will be close. I think it'll be interesting. I think this is probably a category that's pretty wide open in terms of, who's going to battle for it. But I'll roll with Fred.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of part 1 of the Over Under Spectacular. We'll be back tomorrow with part 2 as we dig into such questions as who will lead the team in dunks and what will the Raptors' record be against the Eastern Conference? Those and so many more. We'll save all the plugs for tomorrow, but in the meantime, go check out Vivek, Raptors.com, at Vivek and Jacob on Twitter. Sahal over at Raptors Republic doing the wrap-up podcast after games, at Sahal Abdi on Twitter. Go support Raptors Republic, our pals over there. They're a subscriber-based thing now, so go throw your shekels their way because they deserve it. They're fantastic, even if Sahal has a terrible taste in picks. With that, we will round it out. We'll talk to you again tomorrow with part 2 of the 6th annual Locked On Raptors Over Under in Prop Spectacular, and never get better at saying it because I'm bad at speaking words despite it being my job. Anyway, have a good everybody. We'll talk to you Tuesday. Bye-bye.